We are going to deepen our understanding of consumer behavior by exploring how people respond to changes in prices and income. While demand tells us whether consumers want a product, elasticity tells us how strongly they react when conditions change. To do this, we will examine the substitution effect, the income effect, and various types of elasticity that measure responsiveness in economic decision-making. The substitution effect occurs when a change in the price of a good causes consumers to replace it with a cheaper or more expensive alternative, depending on the direction of the price change. In essence, when the price of a product rises, consumers tend to substitute it with a similar, less costly product. Conversely, if the price falls, the product becomes relatively more attractive compared to its alternatives. Suppose the price of coffee increases while the price of tea remains the same. Many consumers may switch from coffee to tea because tea becomes relatively cheaper, demonstrating the substitution effect. The income effect refers to the change in the quantity demanded of a good caused by a change in consumers' real income or purchasing power, resulting from a change in the good's price. When the price of a good decreases, consumers effectively feel richer because they can buy more with the same income, increasing demand. When the price rises, their real income falls, reducing demand. If the price of bread decreases, consumers can buy more bread and possibly other goods as well. Their purchasing power has increased, illustrating a positive income effect. The price elasticity of demand measures how responsive the quantity demanded of a good is to a change in its price. It indicates whether consumers are highly sensitive or relatively indifferent to price changes. If a 10% increase in the price of soft drinks leads to a 20% decrease in the quantity demanded, the demand is considered elastic, as consumers are quite responsive to price changes. Inelastic demand occurs when the quantity demanded changes only slightly in response to a change in price. In other words, consumers continue buying almost the same amount even if prices rise or fall. Essential medications such as insulin exhibit inelastic demand because diabetic patients must purchase them regardless of price changes. Elastic demand describes a situation where a small change in price leads to a relatively large change in the quantity demanded. Consumers are highly responsive to price changes in such cases. If the price of movie tickets increases slightly and attendance drops significantly, the demand for cinema visits is elastic. Several factors influence how elastic or inelastic the demand for a product will be. Understanding these helps businesses and policymakers predict consumer reactions to price changes more accurately. One key determinant is whether close substitutes are available. The more substitutes a good has, the more elastic its demand tends to be, because consumers can easily switch to alternatives when prices change. If the price of one brand of bottled water rises, consumers can quickly shift to another brand, making the demand for bottled water relatively elastic. Another factor is whether the good is a necessity or a luxury. Necessities, such as basic food items or utilities, tend to have inelastic demand, while luxuries such as designer clothing or vacations typically have elastic demand. People will continue to buy electricity even if prices increase, but they may postpone purchasing a new smartphone if its price rises. The share of income spent on a good also affects its elasticity. Goods that represent a large portion of a consumer's budget tend to have more elastic demand, since price changes significantly impact overall spending. A 10% increase in the price of rent can drastically affect a household's budget, leading many to seek cheaper housing options, showing elastic demand. However, a 10% increase in the price of salt would barely affect most consumers, reflecting inelastic demand. The time consumers have to adjust their behavior also influences elasticity. In the short run, demand is often more inelastic because people need time to find alternatives. Over the long run, demand becomes more elastic as consumers adjust habits and substitute products. When gasoline prices rise suddenly, drivers may initially continue purchasing the same amount. Over time, however, they may switch to public transport or buy fuel-efficient vehicles, showing greater elasticity in the long term. The cross-price elasticity of demand measures how the quantity demanded of one good changes in response to a price change in another good. It shows whether two goods are substitutes or complements. If the elasticity is positive, the goods are substitutes. An increase in the price of one raises demand for the other. If it is negative, the goods are complements. An increase in the price of one lowers demand for the other. If an increase in the price of coffee leads to higher sales of tea, the cross-price elasticity between coffee and tea is positive, indicating they are substitutes. Conversely, if higher coffee prices reduce sales of sugar, the elasticity is negative, showing they are complements. The income elasticity of demand measures how the quantity demanded of a good responds to a change in consumers' income. It helps classify goods as normal or inferior based on how demand changes with income. If a 10% increase in consumer income leads to a 15% increase in demand for air travel, the good, air travel, is income elastic and considered a normal good. Income inelastic demand refers to goods for which demand changes only slightly when income changes. Such goods are typically necessities that people continue buying regardless of income fluctuations. Basic food items such as rice or bread are income inelastic, as people purchase nearly the same amount even if their income rises or falls. Income elastic demand applies to goods for which demand changes significantly when income changes. These are often luxury goods or non-essential items. High-end electronics, designer handbags, or international vacations exhibit income elastic demand, as people buy more of them when their income increases and fewer when it decreases. In conclusion, the study of elasticity provides valuable insight into how consumers adjust their purchasing behavior when prices or incomes change. Ultimately, elasticity serves as a crucial bridge between theoretical economics and real-world consumer behavior.